The chime of the realtor's email notification made Brindley's heart leap in her chest. She clutched her phone tighter, her fingers trembling slightly as she opened the message. The subject line read, "Congratulations, your offer has been accepted." 28-year-old Brindley Thompson sat alone in the staff room of Riverside Heights Dental Care, where she had spent the last 5 years cleaning teeth by day before rushing to her evening job at the local coffee shop. Her co-workers had already left for the day, giving her this rare moment of solitude to absorb the life-changing news. "It's mine," she whispered, barely able to contain the mixture of elation and disbelief washing over her. "The house on Maple Ridge Drive is actually mine." The craftsman-style home had captivated her from the moment she'd first driven past it 3 months earlier. With its warm cedar shingles, charming front porch, and mature maple trees framing the property, it represented everything she'd secretly dreamed of, but never dared express to her family. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a garden space in the back, and original hardwood floors throughout. It was perfect. Brindley had arranged viewings during her lunch breaks, calculated mortgage payments late into the night, and meticulously kept her interest in the property hidden from her family. Not one of them knew she had been saving for this moment since she was 23. Not one of them believed she was capable of such independence. As she drove home to her cramped apartment, Brindley rehearsed the speech she would eventually give her family. Would they be proud, shocked, or would they, as they always did, find some way to diminish her achievement? She thought of her older brother James, whose construction business had been launched with a generous down payment from their parents for his first house. She remembered the family celebration they'd thrown when her younger sister Paige was accepted into her MFA program, fully funded by their parents without hesitation. And then there was Brindley, the middle child, the practical one, the one who had put herself through dental hygiene school and worked weekends and holidays while her siblings pursued their dreams with the family's emotional and financial backing. "Not this time," she said firmly to her reflection in the rearview mirror. "This is mine. I did this on my own." 2 weeks later, Brindley stood in the empty living room of her new home, keys in hand. Sunlight streamed through the bay windows, casting honeyed patterns across the oak floors. She had signed the papers that morning, transferring her life savings, every extra penny she had earned over 5 years of double shifts, to the previous owners. She moved through each room slowly, running her fingers along the walls, mentally placing furniture she had yet to purchase, imagining future Christmases and quiet Sunday mornings. In the master bedroom, she stood before the window overlooking the backyard and allowed herself a moment of pure, uncomplicated joy. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Her mother's name flashed on the screen. "Brindley, dear, are you coming to dinner tonight? James and Amber will be there, and Paige is driving in from the city." Brindley took a deep breath. "I can't tonight, Mom. I'm busy." "Busy? With what? It's family dinner. You're never too busy for family." Brindley looked around at her empty house, her house, and made a decision. "I'll explain everything soon, I promise. I just need a little more time." She ended the call and continued her solitary celebration, knowing that soon enough her private victory would become public knowledge. But for now, this moment belonged to her alone. 3 weeks had passed since Brindley had moved into her home on Maple Ridge Drive. She had furnished it sparsely but thoughtfully, a comfortable sectional for the living room, a sturdy oak dining table big enough for future gatherings, and a queen-size bed that made her feel like royalty after years of sleeping on a pull-out sofa in her studio apartment. She had also installed a security system, nothing fancy, just a doorbell camera and motion-activated cameras at the front and back entrances. A sensible precaution for a woman living alone, the installation technician had assured her. It was this sensible precaution that sent an alert to her phone one Tuesday afternoon while she was at work, halfway through cleaning Mrs. Peterson's teeth. "Excuse me for just a moment," Brindley said, stepping away to check the notification. The thumbnail image showed her front door opening. She tapped to enlarge it and felt her stomach drop. There was her mother, Carol Thompson, inserting a key into Brinley's front door lock. Behind her stood Amber, James's wife, and another woman Brinley didn't recognize, carrying what appeared to be a professional-looking portfolio. Brinley watched in stunned silence as the three women entered her home. She quickly switched to the indoor camera feed and turned up the volume. "As you can see," her mother was saying, gesturing around Brinley's carefully decorated living room, "it's a lovely space with good bones, but it needs a woman's touch. Brinley has always been so practical, no eye for design." "The layout is perfect for what James and I need," Amber replied, running her hand along the mantel of the fireplace. Brinley's fireplace. 3 bedrooms would give us space for the nursery and a home office. The third woman nodded professionally. "The market in this neighborhood is hot right now. If your daughter is willing to sell, I could have it listed by the end of the week. She could make a nice little profit." Brinley's hands began to shake. Sell? Profit? What were they talking about? "Oh, Brinley will listen to reason," her mother said confidently. "She always does. This house is far too much responsibility for a single girl. She hasn't thought it through. Once James explains the financial benefits, she'll understand this is for the best." The 3 women continued their tour, moving through Brinley's bedroom, commenting on the wasted space and lack of vision. Each word felt like a physical blow. "Mrs. Thompson." The dental assistant's voice pulled her back to reality. "Mrs. Peterson is waiting." "I'm sorry," Brinley managed, her voice tight. "I need to leave. Family emergency." 30 minutes later, Brinley pulled into her driveway just as her mother, Amber, and the unknown woman, a realtor, Brinley now realized, were exiting her front door. "Brinley!" Her mother's surprise quickly morphed into a forced smile. "What a coincidence. I was just showing Amber your lovely home." Brinley stepped from her car, her entire body rigid with controlled fury. "With a key I didn't give you." Her mother waved dismissively. "Mrs. Kellerman's daughter, Sarah, is in my book club. I mentioned I wanted to surprise you with some housewarming decorations, and she was happy to provide the spare key you left with them." "I left that key for emergencies," Brinley said quietly, her calm exterior belying the storm within. "Not for unauthorized tours, and certainly not for planning to sell my home without my knowledge or consent." Amber stepped forward, her expression placating. "Brinley, we were just exploring options. With the baby coming and James's business struggling a bit." "Get off my property," Brinley interrupted, no longer able to maintain her composure. "All of you. Now." The realtor, looking uncomfortable, murmured something about being in touch and quickly departed. Amber retreated to her car, but Carol Thompson stood her ground. "You're overreacting, as usual," her mother said stiffly. "We're family. We're trying to help you." "Help me?" Brinley laughed bitterly. "By going behind my back? By assuming I can't make my own decisions? By treating my biggest achievement like it's a mistake to be corrected?" "Achievement?" Her mother's eyebrows rose. "Brinley, buying a house isn't an achievement. It's a responsibility you're not ready for. Your brother." "I don't care what James would do," Brinley cut in. "This is my house. I bought it with my money, and you had no right to enter it without my permission." Before her mother could respond, Brinley held out her hand. "The key, now." With visible reluctance, Carol dropped the key into her daughter's palm. "We'll talk about this when you've calmed down. Your father will be very disappointed." Brinley watched her mother drive away, then went inside and closed the door. She leaned against it, sliding down until she sat on the floor, her head in her hands. Only then did she allow herself to cry. The locksmith arrived at 8 o'clock the next morning. Brinley had called in sick to work, something she had never done before, and spent the night researching home security and property rights. She had also discovered, through a series of text messages with Mrs. Kellerman, that her mother had not merely borrowed the spare key, but had actually kept it, telling Mrs. Kellerman that Brinley had asked her to hold on to it for safekeeping. "All 4 exterior locks, please," Brinley told the locksmith, a friendly middle-aged man named Frank. And I'd like the new keys to be non-duplicable without my written authorization. Frank nodded understandingly. Family troubles. Brinley hesitated, then sighed. Is it that obvious? In 22 years of changing locks, I've learned that 90% of my calls come down to either a bad breakup or family boundary issues. He smiled kindly. Don't worry. Your house, your rules. As Frank worked, Brinley's phone began to ring incessantly. First James, then her father, then Paige, all calling one after another. She silenced each call, knowing what was coming. By noon, the locks had been changed, the security system upgraded, and a new video doorbell installed that would allow Brinley to grant temporary access codes for legitimate visitors. She paid Frank, thanking him for his discretion, and prepared herself for the inevitable confrontation. It came sooner than expected. At 2:15, 3 cars pulled into her driveway. Her parents' Lincoln, James's truck, and Paige's compact hybrid. The Thompson family invasion had arrived in full force. Brinley watched through the security app as her father rang the doorbell. His normally jovial face was set in stern lines she recognized from childhood scoldings. She pressed the intercom button. Yes? Her father looked startled by the electronic response. Brinley, open the door. We need to talk. I'm not comfortable with that right now, Dad. I'm still processing the fact that Mom obtained a key to my home under false pretenses and was planning to sell it without my knowledge. Her mother pushed forward into the camera's view. That is a ridiculous exaggeration. I was simply showing Amber options. James and Amber need a proper family home, and this neighborhood is perfect for them. You're being selfish, Brinley. James appeared next, his expression caught between embarrassment and entitlement. Sis, come on. You don't even need all this space. Amber's pregnant, and my business is going through a rough patch. We can't afford anything in this area right now. That's not my problem, James, Brinley replied, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. I worked 2 jobs for 5 years to afford this house. 5 years of double shifts and no vacations. I didn't get help with a down payment. I didn't have my education paid for. I did this on my own, and I'm not giving it up because you assume your needs automatically outrank mine. Paige, who had been hanging back, stepped forward. Brinley, you're making a scene. The neighbors can see us standing out here. Just let us in so we can discuss this like adults. Adults? Brinley laughed incredulously. Adults respect boundaries. Adults don't enter someone's home without permission. Adults don't assume they have the right to make decisions about someone else's property. Her father's face darkened. Young lady, you open this door right now. Your mother and I raised you better than this. You raised me to believe I was less important than James and Paige, Brinley said quietly. You raised me to think my dreams didn't matter as much as theirs. Well, this house is my dream, and I'm not letting anyone take it from me, especially not my family. She ended the call and turned off her phone, ignoring the continued ringing of the doorbell and the increasingly angry shouting from her driveway. Eventually, after one of her neighbors emerged to see what the commotion was about, her family retreated to their vehicles and drove away, leaving Brinley alone in the silence of her home, her fortress now against the people who should have been her strongest supporters. For the next 3 weeks, Brinley existed in a strange state of limbo. She went to work, came home, and tried to enjoy the house she had sacrificed so much to own. But the joy of home ownership had been tainted by her family's reaction and the subsequent silence. After the confrontation on her doorstep, no one from her family had contacted her. No calls, no texts, no emails, even her weekly Sunday dinner invitation, a Thompson family tradition for as long as she could remember, had ceased to arrive. The isolation stung more than she wanted to admit. Despite their flaws, despite the years of feeling like an afterthought, they were still her family. And now, it seemed, they had cut her out completely for the crime of standing up for herself. On a rainy Saturday afternoon in April, Brinley was organizing her kitchen cabinets when her doorbell rang. The security app showed Mrs. Kellerman, the elderly neighbor who had unwittingly played a part in the key debacle, standing on her porch with an umbrella and what appeared to be a casserole dish. Brindley opened the door with a genuine smile. "Mrs. Kellerman, please come in out of the rain." The older woman shuffled inside, shaking out her umbrella. "I've brought you my famous tuna noodle casserole. I noticed you've been alone these past weeks and, well, I wanted to apologize for my part in what happened." "You have nothing to apologize for," Brindley assured her, taking the casserole with gratitude. "You were misled by my mother. It wasn't your fault." Mrs. Kellerman settled at Brindley's kitchen table as Brindley prepared tea for them both. "Still, I feel responsible. Family estrangements are painful things. My sister and I didn't speak for 12 years over a china pattern our mother left us. 12 years. And for what? By the time we reconciled, most of the dishes were chipped anyway." Brindley smiled sadly. "This is a bit more significant than a china pattern, I'm afraid." Mrs. Kellerman nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps. But sometimes what appears to be malice is actually desperation poorly expressed. Have you spoken to your sister-in-law at all?" "Amber." "No. She was part of the situation." Mrs. Kellerman sipped her tea. "My daughter Sarah, the one in the book club with your mother, mentioned something interesting yesterday. Apparently your brother's construction business isn't just going through a rough patch, as they claimed. It's on the verge of bankruptcy." Brindley stared at her, stunned. "Bankruptcy? But James always said business was booming." Pride is a powerful thing, especially in men who believe they must provide at all costs. From what Sarah gathered, your sister-in-law approached your mother in confidence, desperate for solutions. They're facing foreclosure on their current home, and with a baby coming. The pieces began to fall into place in Brindley's mind. The unauthorized tour, her mother's insistence that selling would be for the best, James's uncharacteristic pleading on her doorstep. They hadn't been trying to steal her dream. They had been drowning and grasping for anything that might keep them afloat. "Why didn't they just tell me the truth?" Brindley whispered. Mrs. Kellerman patted her hand gently. "The same reason you didn't tell them about buying this house until after it was done. Sometimes it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. Sometimes pride prevents us from showing vulnerability to the people whose opinion matters most." After Mrs. Kellerman left, Brindley sat in her living room for a long time, thinking about family dynamics and unspoken expectations. She thought about her brother, who had always been the golden child, the successful son carrying on their father's entrepreneurial legacy. How difficult it must have been for him to admit failure, even to his wife. How impossible it must have seemed to ask for help from his younger sister, the practical, responsible one who had always been in his shadow. She thought about her mother, whose misguided attempts to protect her children often manifested as control. Carol Thompson had always believed she knew what was best for her children, even when her children were adults fully capable of making their own decisions. And she thought about herself, the middle child who had spent her life trying to prove her worth, working twice as hard for half the recognition, keeping her dreams small and manageable so they wouldn't compete with her siblings' grander ambitions. With sudden clarity, Brindley realized that this confrontation had been brewing for decades. It wasn't about the house, not really. It was about respect. It was about being seen as an equal member of the family, not just the reliable daughter who would always acquiesce to everyone else's needs. She picked up her phone and, after a moment's hesitation, composed a text to her sister-in-law. "Amber, I think we need to talk. Just the two of us. Coffee tomorrow at Riverside Cafe at 10. The response came almost immediately. "I'll be there." The Riverside Cafe was quiet on Sunday morning. Brindley arrived early, securing a corner table with some privacy from other patrons. She ordered a latte and waited, rehearsing what she wanted to say. Amber arrived precisely at 10, looking tired and slightly apprehensive. Her pregnancy was more visible than the last time Brindley had seen her, the gentle swell of her belly evident beneath her loose sweater. "Thank you for meeting me," Brindley said as Amber sat down. "I ordered you a decaf chai. You still like those, right?" Amber nodded, a flicker of surprise crossing her features at Brinley's thoughtfulness. Thank you. I wasn't sure what to expect from this conversation. I just want the truth, Brinley said simply. About James's business, about the house situation, all of it. Amber's shoulders slumped. She stared into her chai for a long moment before speaking. We're losing everything, Brinley. The business, our house, our savings, everything. James took on a commercial project that was too big. The client went bankrupt halfway through, leaving us with hundreds of thousands in unpaid invoices and material costs we'd already covered. Why didn't you tell me? Brinley asked quietly. James wouldn't let me. Amber's voice cracked. You know how he is, how your whole family is. Success is the only acceptable outcome. Failure is unthinkable. He kept believing he could turn things around, find new investors, secure another big contract. But the debts just kept mounting. Brinley nodded, understanding all too well her family's aversion to acknowledging weakness or failure. So you went to my mother. I was desperate, Amber admitted. The foreclosure notice came, and I was having panic attacks thinking about where we'd live when the baby comes. Your mom suggested we look into downsizing to something more affordable, and then she mentioned your house, which she didn't know I had purchased until she saw my new address on some mail at her house. Brinley filled in, the timeline becoming clearer. Amber nodded miserably. She was shocked. Said you'd never mentioned wanting to buy a house, that you hadn't asked for their help or advice. She was hurt, I think, and then she got this idea that maybe I'd sell it to you and James. Brinley finished. It sounds so awful now, saying it out loud, Amber said, tears welling in her eyes. I never should have gone along with it, but she made it sound so reasonable, like you had impulsively bought something too big for you, and we needed something we could afford, and it would all work out perfectly. She even said she'd help with the difference so you wouldn't lose money. Brinley felt a complex mixture of emotions, anger at the presumption, sympathy for Amber's situation, and a deep, resonant hurt that her family had once again assumed her needs were secondary, her decisions impulsive rather than carefully planned. The house wasn't impulsive, Amber. I saved for 5 years. I researched neighborhoods and mortgage rates and property taxes. I calculated exactly what I could afford and found a home that met my needs without overextending myself. It was probably the least impulsive decision I've ever made. Amber looked genuinely surprised. She never said, "We didn't realize." Of course not, Brinley said, a note of bitterness creeping into her voice. No one in my family has ever believed I'm capable of making sound decisions. James gets business loans from my parents without question. Paige gets her entire education funded. But me, I've been working since I was 16, putting myself through school, saving for my future. And still, when I finally achieve something significant, the assumption is that I must have acted rashly and need to be rescued from my own choices. Amber reached across the table, hesitantly placing her hand over Brinley's. I'm so sorry. I didn't understand. None of us did. Brinley took a deep breath. I don't blame you, Amber. You're trying to protect your family, your future. I understand that better than anyone, but I can't give up my house. I won't. I wouldn't ask you to, Amber said quickly. Not anymore. Not now that I understand what it means to you. They sat in silence for a moment, the tension between them easing slightly. Finally, Brinley spoke. I might not be able to give you my house, but maybe I can help in other ways. I have some savings left, not much, but enough for a security deposit on a rental. And I know people at the bank who might be able to help James restructure his business debt. Amber's eyes widened. You would do that? After everything? Your family, Brinley said simply. That goes both ways. It means respecting each other's boundaries and decisions, but it also means being there when someone truly needs help. As they finished their drinks, Brinley made a decision. I think it's time for a family dinner at my house this Sunday. Are you sure? Amber asked cautiously. Brinley nodded, a determined set to her jaw. It's time we all learn to see each other clearly. No more assumptions. No more playing the roles we've been assigned. Just honesty. Honesty sounds terrifying, Amber said with a weak smile. It is, Brinley agreed, but it's also overdue. Sunday evening arrived with a crisp spring breeze that rustled the maple trees lining Brinley's street. She had spent the day preparing, cleaning, cooking, arranging the dining room for the first family meal in her new home. A home that, despite the controversy surrounding it, she had come to love more deeply with each passing day. At precisely 6 o'clock, her doorbell rang. Through the security app, she could see her entire family standing awkwardly on her porch. Her parents, James and Amber and Paige, who had driven in from the city, each of them looked uncomfortable, uncertain of their welcome. Brinley took a deep breath and opened the door. "Welcome to my home," she said simply, stepping aside to let them enter. Her mother moved forward first, a bouquet of spring flowers in her hands. "These are for you," she said stiffly, clearly struggling with the unfamiliar role of guest in her middle child's domain. "Thank you," Brinley replied, accepting the flowers with a small smile. "They're beautiful." Her father followed, his expression a mixture of pride and confusion as he took in the tastefully decorated entryway. "You've done well with the place," he offered gruffly. James and Amber entered next, hand in hand, both looking as though they expected the floor to open beneath them at any moment. Paige brought up the rear, her artist's eye taking in every detail of Brinley's decorating choices. "Dinner's almost ready," Brinley announced, leading them through to the dining room where the table was set with her grandmother's china, pieces her mother had given her years ago, never expecting them to be used in a home of Brinley's own. Would anyone like a drink first? The initial awkwardness began to fade as Brinley served drinks and showed them around the main floor of her home. She could see the surprise in their eyes as they noted the careful attention to detail, the thoughtful organization, the personal touches that made the house distinctly hers. Once they were seated at the dinner table, Brinley raised her glass. "I'd like to propose a toast," she said, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest, "to new beginnings and better understanding." They clinked glasses uncertainly, the tension in the room palpable. Finally, her mother broke the silence. "Brinley, I owe you an apology," Carol Thompson said, the words clearly difficult for her to articulate. "I had no right to enter your home without permission or to make plans regarding your property without consulting you. It was disrespectful." Brinley nodded, acknowledging the apology, but waiting for more. Her mother continued haltingly. "I've always thought I knew what was best for my children. I believed I was protecting you, guiding you, but I realize now that I've been controlling and unfair, particularly to you." "How so?" Brinley prompted gently. Carol exchanged glances with her husband before continuing. "We've treated your siblings' dreams and aspirations as more important than yours. We've provided financial support to them without offering the same to you. We've taken you for granted, assuming you would always be the practical one, the one who needed less from us. We were wrong," her father added, his usual bluster subdued. "You've proven that you're capable of achieving remarkable things on your own. This house," he gestured around them, "this is evidence of your determination and intelligence. We should have recognized that long ago." James cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology too, sis. I've been so focused on my own problems that I didn't stop to consider what this house means to you. Amber told me about your conversation, about how long you saved for this place. I'm proud of you, and ashamed of myself for thinking my needs should come before your dreams." Paige, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, spoke up. "I never realized how differently we were treated. My education, James's business, we took it for granted that Mom and Dad would help us. It never occurred to me that you weren't receiving the same support. That wasn't fair." Brinley felt tears threatening, but blinked them back. This moment of recognition was too important to blur with emotion. "Thank you," she said simply. "I've spent most of my life feeling like the afterthought in this family, the reliable one who would always understand, always give way, always put her own needs last. Buying this house was the first time I put myself first, and the way you all reacted confirmed every fear I've ever had about my place in this family." Her mother winced visibly at these words, but Brinley continued. "I don't need your financial support. I've proven I can succeed without it. What I need is your respect. I need you to see me as an equal member of this family, capable of making my own decisions and living with the consequences, good or bad." "We do respect you," her father insisted. "More than ever now." "Then show me," Brinley said firmly, "by respecting my boundaries, by celebrating my achievements without trying to co-opt them, by treating me like an adult with agency over her own life." The conversation flowed more easily after that, as they enjoyed the meal Brinley had prepared. James opened up about his business troubles, finally letting go of the facade of success he had maintained for so long. Their parents, to everyone's surprise, listened without judgment, offering practical advice rather than sweeping solutions. Amber shared her fears about impending motherhood and the financial insecurity they were facing. Paige admitted that her artistic career wasn't as financially viable as she had pretended it was, and that she had been considering moving back home temporarily. And Brinley, for perhaps the first time in her adult life, felt truly seen by her family. Not as the practical middle child who would always conform to others' expectations, but as a woman with dreams and capabilities of her own. As the evening drew to a close, her mother helped her clear the dishes while the others moved to the living room. "This is a lovely home," Carol said quietly. "It suits you." "Thank you," Brinley replied. "That means a lot coming from you." Her mother hesitated, then continued, "I want you to know that I'm going to try to do better, to see you for who you are, not who I thought you should be. It won't be easy, old habits and all that, but I'm committed to trying." Brinley smiled, a genuine, hopeful smile. That's all any of us can do, try to be better tomorrow than we were yesterday. Later, as she stood on her front porch waving goodbye to her departing family, Brinley felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. The house on Maple Ridge Drive was more than just a structure of wood and stone. It had become the catalyst for a long overdue reckoning within her family. She had established her boundaries, claimed her independence, and earned a new level of respect from the people whose opinions had shaped her self-perception for so long. The road ahead wouldn't be without its challenges. Family dynamics didn't change overnight after all, but for the first time, Brinley felt confident that they were all moving in the right direction. As she closed her front door, her door to her home, Brinley knew that she had finally found her place, not just in the house on Maple Ridge Drive, but within the complicated, imperfect, but ultimately loving constellation of her family. If you enjoyed this story about standing up for yourself and finding your place in the world, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Your support helps us continue to bring you meaningful stories that touch the heart and inspire the soul.